Okay, so I'm starting off this video with where we dropped off last time, and I'll just kind of recap this of how we built this bottle. By the way, there's a bottle, and then there's a liquid on the inside. Okay. All right, so just to go back, now one of the nice things about Fusion 360 is it captures everything down here at the bottom by steps, and so you can always go back in time and look at what's going on. All right, so the first thing that we did was draw a sketch. Okay, so we drew a sketch on the ground. Okay, so we just drew a sketch. So I can actually go back in here. I can right click on it and I can edit sketch and I can edit this. Okay, the main thing that I did here is I wanted it centered, and I see a lot of people when they're drawing can't visually see center. So, you can get in here and you can count how many squares and such, but that's not that it has to be center, but it's life's easier if you make things symmetrical. Okay, so we did that and we finished the sketch. So basically, we created a rectangle is what we did. And then we came in here and we filleted the edges. Okay. And that's what we did. And I no longer need that. So, okay. All right. So finish the sketch. I go up here, hit my home button. Okay, so that's going to be the bottom of our bottle. Okay, so now the next thing we did was what's called, we did a construction plane. Okay, anytime we draw with a spline, we're drawing on a plane. So our first one we drew on the ground plane, but now I want to draw another slice and I want it to be up here. So under this construct here, you got all different kinds of ways to make construction planes. Okay, there's all kinds of ways according to how we want them. The one we did was just an offset plane. Okay, so all you're doing is clicking on that, and I'll go here and you'll see as I move this forward, we didn't have a construction plane. Now it's making construction planes. And I can right click and edit this, and this is where I made the plane, and I just clicked on it and just pulled it up. You can make it wherever you want. By the way, these planes go off in infinity. If you visually want to adjust them, you can grab the edge of them and adjust them. Okay, so I can turn it on here. And I can always just say I want this to, and this is just visually. This plane goes off to infinity, so it doesn't really matter, okay? But I could come in and say, oh, well, I want this plane so that, when I'm drawing, I can see the plane. And so I want it to say something like that. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new drawing, and I'm going to draw on this plane. Okay, so this is the bottom of the bottle. Then I'm going to draw another spline up here. Okay, which is what I did. So we'll go forward here. And now you'll see I have a new sketch where I created that. And let's go to the top here, and I can turn my construction plane off. And so I just made another shape that's similar to that. That's bigger. This shape could be different shape, that it'll create from one to the other. I just wanted the bottle to be the same shape as it goes up, but I wanted it to be a little bit bigger at the top than the bottom. Okay, and that was just something I did. Okay, so once we did that, then what we're doing is a loft to connect these through. Okay, so you're going to go create here, loft, and then you pick one, and then you pick the other. And that will create us a shape there, which is what I did. Now, right now, what I'm doing here, and you'll notice that when you were initially doing this, it's gray, because when we make something, it's a gray. I'm going to turn off the sketches. But I've gone ahead and put a material on this, and so when you put a material on something, which I put like a clear glass on it, then it's going to appear this way. But what you can do is under inspect right up here, you can come in here and tell it to display component colors. So every time that we make a new component, and we're doing everything as one component, you'll see there's a little turquoise little bar. Mine's turquoise, usually be a different color, and you'll see this little bar here is turquoise. So what that's doing is saying, okay, it's going to be a turquoise color when I turn off, and it really doesn't matter. We just want something that we can see it easier. Okay, so we did that. Then what we did was we came in and created a cylinder. Okay, we created a cylinder and we created it on the top here. Now when we did this, I didn't join it together. Okay, and that's the default is join, and so I had a lot of people that they were joining theirs together. Okay, so the default here is to join it together with this, but that's not what I wanted, because eventually I was going to cut a curve into this, so I wanted to join it afterwards. So your options usually are join something. Okay, I can say cut, which one object is cutting another one. I can say an intersect, and that leaves the part where they intersect. Or I can say a new body, and sometimes it'll allow you to make a new component, okay, which will put it on another layer. Okay, so we said new body. Okay, and I wanted that as a new body, that way I could adjust it. Okay, the next thing we did was we came in and made a new sketch. And we made a sketch because I wanted this bottle to be curved at the top. So we made a sketch. We used a 3-point arc. So we just put a point on one side, point on the other, and then we kind of arc it. You just want to make sure that you're not clipping the edge up here so we get a flat spot on it. So we just want a nice arc, okay? And then from there, once I had that, then I used our split body to pick this body and just pick that curve to cut it, and that left me this little sliver here, okay? And that's the part I don't need anymore, so I can just right click and we can remove that. And so now what we have is a nice kind of curved bottle up there at the top. And you'll notice that this doesn't cross it anymore. That's why I didn't join it with it, because I was going to do that later. Okay, so the next thing we did was that I wanted to come in here and start putting rounding these corners. So I started off with a fillet at the bottom. So I came in here and just put a fillet at the bottom. Now I didn't fillet the top and the bottom at the same time because I wanted them to have a different curve on them. So I put a small curve here because it's still got to have a nice flat place for the bottle to sit. And then I added another fillet up here at the top to round off the top of the bottle. I made it a little bit bigger. I didn't want to make it so big that that I clipped into this, and I'm going to put a little bit of a fillet in here, so I left a little bit of room in there. Okay, and I can turn off our sketch now. All right, so the next thing I needed to do is to move this down so that these intersected, so that I can put these together. So I just grabbed my move tool, right click move, grabbed this and moved it down. And they needed to intersect. And so then I can do a combined body and combine these two together. So because I knew I was going to be cutting that off, that's why I didn't want to join them together. I would join them later. And so now it's actually part of that. All right, so the next thing I wanted to do was to fillet this a little bit so it has a nice round, and I wanted to adjust that fillet. So I really kind of wanted it where it didn't cross this edge. You could get into some problems where you're running a fillet into another fillet. It would probably do it, but my life is easier if I just don't make it so big that there's a little bit of space in there. Okay, next thing I want to do is make the bottle hollow, okay, which what you're doing is using a shell, and you're clicking the top. And when you're doing that, and I'll show you, I'll edit this, that you can adjust this by either pulling this or typing it in. So I wanted to give the bottle a little bit of thickness. Now, I'm going to exaggerate the thickness, okay, because for rendering purposes, but not for manufacturing purposes, but for rendering purposes, if it's a little thicker, it makes my life a little bit easier, especially when I'm putting the liquid in there. So I'm making it a little bit thicker than the bottle actually really would be. So that gave us a thickness to it. So we can see in the bottle now. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to fill it with liquid. Okay, we're going to do what's called a boundary fill. So that's under Create, Boundary Fill right here. And it's a way for us to create something that fills a volume of space. So I had some people that had not done the shell yet, and then they were trying to do a boundary fill and it wouldn't work. Well, that's because there was no volume in it to fill up, so they couldn't do it. All right, so the next thing we need to do is decide when we're putting liquid in this, how far do we want the liquid to go up? In this particular case, I wanted it to go all the way up, the liquid fill it up, and go up, maybe about a third into this cap, something like that, into this little spigot at the top. So I made a new construction plane. So we just did an offset plane like we did before. And you'll see I have two planes in here now. Okay, this was the one that I drew my sketch on for the top of the bottle. Okay, and so this is the one I'm using to actually where I'm going to fill the liquid up to this point. Okay. All right, so the next thing I do is a boundary fill, okay? And doing a boundary fill, I will edit this. To do a boundary fill, the first thing you're doing is you're selecting the tools to use to create the boundary. So the first thing I created is I clicked on this top, on this construction plane to know, okay, I want it to go up to there. And then I picked the body, and it knew to fill it up, that I wanted to fill this up. Okay, the next thing you have to do is you go select cells. So basically what this did is it created three different things. It created a little top piece right here, and if I check this, I can keep that, but I don't want this. It's got two here. The one at the top is the inside, and the one at the bottom is the outside. I don't really want the outside. So what I'm doing here is picking this one, and then that's what it's going to keep. It's going to ignore the bottom one, which is the outside bottle, and it's going to ignore this, which is the top. Okay, so that's what I did, and then that left me with an inside piece. And that's going to be our liquid. So we come over here and rename this. Just clicked on this and renamed it liquid. Okay, what else we got on here? Oh, now the next thing we want to do is we want to take, and because of the nature of 3D renderers, okay, this is a specific thing that you just have to know about 3D renderers. So what we want to do is what's called a section analysis. Okay, so under this inspect button over here, these are all different tools to inspect something to see if its curvature is right. There's different things you can do. One of the things you can do is what's called a section analysis. And what this does is basically cuts through the center of something so that you can see inside of it. Okay, so we added that to it, and I have it right over here, and you'll see it makes a new layer. And then what that did is that cut through this so that we can see what we have. Okay, and so we have the inside piece and the outside piece. So we have the bottle, and we have the liquid. Now, in rendering, you're going to have a problem with what's called coincident faces. So in other words, where the liquid hits the glass bottle on the inside, a render is going to have a hard time because those two edges are occupying the same space. So a little trick that we do is we have the liquid overlap into the glass, so they overlap. So we kind of want to take this liquid and have it squish out into the glass is what we want it to do. All right, so what we do is what's called offset faces. Okay, so we pick the liquid. Okay, and to do this, what we're doing here, and let me, I'll edit this so we can see. I turn the section analysis off. Then we want to pick the entire thing. Okay, we want to draw a box, so we pick the entire thing. But what we don't want is this little sliver right here. We don't want to push it up, so we just hold down the shift key and we click on it, so we deselect it so it's not selecting. Okay. All right, then what we can do is once you're in the middle of this feature, okay, so we hadn't done anything yet, we're just in the middle of it, which this will be at 0, okay, then we can turn our section analysis back on and the bottle back on. And now as a matter of fact, I changed this earlier. Let's go back to millimeters. Okay, let's go back here. And I had this at 0. Okay, so we want to start pushing this out. Okay, so what we're going to do is start typing any small little increments, and we'll be able to see it start going out. Oops, I shouldn't hit enter. And see, we'll see. And what we want to do is kind of split the difference there, so that 1 millimeter is about correct. All right, so now the liquid is going to overlap into that, which is what we wanted. Okay. And what's the next thing I got in here? Okay, and then that's putting the label on it, but I don't want to do that yet. So I'm actually going to, we'll just leave it. So what we did next is we went ahead and put our label on this. So we'll turn off our section analysis and turn our decal on. All right, so you're going to be creating a label. I gave you a little dummy label to put on here, okay? And to do this, okay, you're doing what's called a decal. So you're going to insert a decal. When you do that, then you're just going to go out here and you're going to pick the image that you want, okay? And then once you've done that, then you have to pick the surface you want to put it on. So you'll pick the image, then you pick a surface. I pick this surface, and then it'll pop up on here. Once it's in here, then you have all kinds of options of rotating it, okay? And just so you understand, this gizmo is, this is rotation. By the way, you can type things in over here too. Sometimes it comes in flipped, so you got to flip horizontal here, you got to flip vertical here. This little line right here is to scale it, distort it this way, okay? This one distorts it that way. But if you just need it bigger, you grab this corner and then you can scale it up this way, okay? Let me go back to scaling. And then, of course, you can move it. So anyway, we're putting this on. You can always come back and change it, you know, by coming here, right-click, and edit it. You can load a new image in if you need to change the logo that's on there. You can do that. And so that's how we got that on there. But I want to go back and I want to do some other things to this bottle now, too, to get it prepared. So one of the things that I'm going to turn our section analysis on is that most bottles are thicker at the bottom than they are on the sides. So like as the glass goes down, it becomes thicker at the bottom. Okay, so both our bottle and our liquid need to be adjusted. So that's what the next thing we're going to do. So what we're going to do is to create a new sketch. and we'll from the side here. And this is where we're going to draw a line to where we want the thickness of the bottle to be. So I'm going to say about this thick. So I'm going to draw a straight line across here, right click. Okay, and that's going to be a line, so we're going to tell it that this is going to be the thickness of the glass. So I finish this sketch. And so what I can do is I'm going to go split body, and I'm going to pick both the bottle and the liquid, picking both of these because I want to cut through both of them. And then you pick your splitting tool, which is this line, and then it'll cut through both of these here. Okay, so now we have a new little piece here, and we're going to deal with the bottle first. All right, so what we want to do is, this is a hollow and we want to make this solid. So what we're going to be doing is, we haven't played with this yet, but you have different areas in here, modeling surfaces. And right now we're treating this as a solid, but what I want to do is to come back and treat it as individual little pieces. So if I go to surface, now it's going to treat these as individual surfaces, and so it's not a solid, they're individual pieces. So the first thing I want to do is to grab this top piece and then just delete it. Hit your delete key. Now you'll see these icons change, and they're changed to a surface. These are surface icons, these are solid icons. So now it's giving me an in and an out. Okay, so this is the out, this is the in. I don't want the end anymore, the inside, so I just remove that. And so now I need to cap the top of this. Okay, so I make this a solid piece. To do that, that's called a patch, which is this button right here. Click this and click OK, and it made a patch across there. Now, right now, these are still surfaces. And so what we want to do is to stitch this together so it's one piece, which is this button right here, stitch. Okay, so you're going to do a stitch. Then I pick this, and then I pick this. It should be a green line around it. That means it's going to join that, and I click OK, and now this is a solid piece. So I'm able to fill that, and it's going to be a solid piece of glass in there. Okay, so now basically I need to do kind of the same thing. Actually, okay, on this liquid that's in here, I don't need this piece now. So I can right click and remove this, and I'm going to go back to this piece here. Okay, so now what I'm going to want to do is, let's see, I think, all right, let's do it this way. Let's go back to our solid. We'll hide the liquid, and now what we want to do is to join these two back together. Okay, so what we're going to do is go to our combine, and we're going to pick this, and then we're going to pick this, and we're going to have it join it. And so now that's put that as a solid piece in here. And if I go back to our section analysis, you'll see now it's got a solid piece. Now it's too sharp in here because a piece of glass wouldn't be that sharp, so I want to fillet this. So what I want to do is go here and do a fillet, and then I want to round this glass so that it's, as it comes down, the glass rounds in here. And don't be scared, because even though I have this section analysis on, it's doing it all the way around it. Okay, the part that's hidden, it's still doing that, and I click OK on that. Okay, so now I have the problem with the liquid, because the liquid needs to be rounded too. Okay, so in its case, I need to go here, and I'm going to do a fillet on it. And then I want to turn the bottle back on. And so I'm rounding it as well. As a matter of fact, I think what we should do is, before we do that, let's do this. We're going to push pull. So we're going to take this and we're going to do a press pull, and it needs to come down. So let's go to the side here, and we need to pull it down so it overlaps back into the glass. Now we need to do our fillet on it. So we need to do our fillet. And so now we round that, and so that liquid is penetrating into that glass, and we have a thicker bottom now, which is better for us. Yay! Okay, we have a couple more things that we want to do, and so we want to fix the liquid. There's a going to be a problem with the liquid, so we'll turn our section analysis off. Let's hide the bottle. Liquid, when liquid hits glass, there's a tension between the liquid and the glass. It's called a surfactant layer is what that's called. And it creates a tension so that as the water hits the glass, it bows upwards. I don't know if you've ever looked at a liquid inside of a glass, but the liquid doesn't go straight into the glass. It bows up, and it's got a little curvature around it, and that's called a meniscus, and we need to create that up here. So what I want to do is go back to my surface, and I'm going to pick this, and what I'm going to do is an offset and just pull this up, and then it's going to create me another slice up here. All right, then I'm going to take this and I'm going to do a thicken to it, and that'll allow me to make this a certain amount of thickness. Like so. And let's see, I can go to a solid, go transfer to my solid. I'm going to pick this edge, and then I'm going to do a offset to pull this out a little bit. Matter of fact, I should look from the front. And what we're wanting to do is just make it so it's a little bit wider than this here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a fillet on this, like so. Pretty good size fillet. And now we're going to use this as a cutting tool to cut into this. So we're going to go right click, move it, pick it, and slide it down so that it's clipping into, so this clips across the edge there. Okay, then we can go combine and take this and take that, and we want it as a cut. And then that will cut into that. And that's going to give us a little curvature so that liquid has a meniscus. This is called the meniscus around it. So that's going to give us our issue up there. Okay, then the last thing we want to do, so that makes our liquid done. Then the last thing we want to do is on our bottle, we need to put some threads on the neck of the bottle up here so that the cap will screw on it. There's a tutorial that I've recorded on how to do it for plastic bottles or glass bottles. What we're going to do here is we're going to do it an easier way that's not exactly correct, but for what we're doing, it'll be fine. I think my neck is a little bit tall here. I'm going to pull it down a little bit so I can just right click, press pull, and I'm just going to make it a little bit shorter or something like that. I think that's a pretty good size. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to create, and we're going to go to thread, and then we're going to pick this surface, and you're just going to put threads on here. Now by default, it's just an illusion, just like a bump map, but we actually want the threads, so we're going to go modeled here, and then it's going to model the threads. You probably want to look at this straight on from the side. And I don't want it to hit this curved fillet down here. So we're going to turn off full length, and then this is going to allow me to make adjustments. And we have different profiles in here, different types of ones. What we want to use, this was one isometric profile. And then I'm pulling this down to maybe right about there so that the threads aren't going to go all the way down and hit into our fillet in there. We don't want it to do that. And so that looks pretty good, and click OK, and then that'll create our threads in there. Okay. And the reality is that these really should be rounded a little bit. So I can do a little bit of a fillet on this. Not too much, just a little bit. Maybe something like that. Hold down my control key. I'm going to pick the bottom two, and that will round those a little bit. We don't want them razor sharp like metal. And I'm going to grab that piece up there too so that's rounded, won't cut our lip. And that looks pretty good, and we're going to click OK. And now we've got our threads on our top. Let's go over to our render space and click on my camera, turn my liquid back on, and then I'm going to pause it while I do a render. Okay, so it's rendering and it's looking pretty nice. So I wanted to go over some of our render settings and our material settings that we're using in here so that you can control your materials. So I'm going to stop the render. By the way, we're not using this render, we're using the render here. This is in canvas, which means it's rendering in our viewport. We're limited to how big that can be based on our viewport. Later, when we get finished with everything, we'll render a really nice big one, and that's when you'll render this one because then I can set in all kinds of parameters. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit stop here. So we have two things we got to deal with, which is our scene settings and our appearance. All right. And I have a camera here. I'm going to delete this just so you understand how to create a camera also. You have a section in here called named views. All right, so I spin this around till I get it the way I want it. By the way, you'll notice this is a vertical render, not a horizontal. That's inside of your scene settings here. Okay, by scene settings down here, on your aspect ratio, it defaults to a 16:9, which is really wide, and we're doing something that's more vertical. We can type in our own aspect ratio, but this 4:5 portrait is pretty good for rendering vertical objects. Okay, so that's how I got that. Okay, for our materials, I'm going to hide the liquid, so we're just dealing with the bottle. And what I did under your Fusion appearances, the appearance is material, okay? And I went to glass, and under glass I went to smooth, and then I got this clear glass, and then you just come over here and you drag and drop it on there is what you do, and then it comes up here. Then once you put it on there, you can click here, double click on this, and its controls will come out, and we want to name it. This is my Oodie glass bottle. Okay, you want to name things because it can get kind of hairy as you experiment with different things, and so I can click done, and now you'll see this has my name on. Okay. You also have a little favorites tab that when you make something that you like, you can put it in here. And so this is a little material library of previous things that I've used. Okay, so the defaults on that is fine for right now. So then we want to hide that and bring the liquid out. And for the liquid, what I did was I went to color density, and I started with this glass heavy color blue. So I drug that and put it in here. So this is going to be my Oodie liquid. And so what I did is change the color from the blue that was there to more of a kind of a honey color, because I was kind of acting like, well, this is going to be like honey. And so I went with a kind of a honey color. Now, two things that you need to, or actually there's, two things you need to deal with right here, which is absorbent distance and refractive index. Both of these kind of control how thick the liquid is going to look. For what we're doing, there are presets in here, and I would tell you to do the water preset will work pretty good for what we're doing. Okay. And then the absorbent distance is how dark the color is going to be. So in other words, let me get over here. So the matter of fact, I can adjust this. Let's go ahead and be rendering, and then I can do this while it's rendering. Okay, so the lower this number is, the darker the liquid's going to be. So there's 5, here's 10, here's 20. I was using 30. But that's just for mine. Yours will be different. So the higher the number, the more translucent the material is going to appear. And the lower the number, the more thicker in color you're going to get in there. Okay. And that's just by the way that you look at things. Okay. And so, and one of the nice things about this is you can adjust all these materials and everything on the fly as we're going. And so that's a huge advantage to be able to do that. Okay, the other thing that we're going to be dealing with here, turn our bottle back on, is the light itself. Okay, so if we go back into these scene settings, this is the color of the background. Okay, so normally we don't want, and I see people do this all the time, we don't want really bright colors in the background. Okay, we want neutral kinds of colors. Okay, I'm not saying you can't have a little bit of color in something. Okay, but we're going to want to keep it, especially for fairly dark for our bottle, so that we can get some nice highlights on it. I would tell you to try to keep this fairly neutral and don't add a lot of color into it. Okay, this is how bright the light is. Okay, so you can adjust your lighting right here to get it brighter if it's too dark. Then on this environment tab, this is being lit by HDRI lighting. Okay, now we can put some other lights in there, but for right now, this is what we're going to do. This plaza is an actual HDRI of a plaza. Okay, and I can actually come over here if I wanted to, and I can say, okay, make the environment. I can see the environment. But for what we're doing, which is tabletop renders, we really don't want to see that. So we want this to be solid color. And really, we don't want all those crazy refractions in here. So they have different kinds of what they call studio lighting that you can drop in here. You just drag it and drop it in here, and then it'll shift to lighting that way. The one I'm using is this grid lighting. That's the lighting that I'm using. Also on your settings over here, this is how reflective the ground plane is. Okay, So if all the way to 0, then it's going to be really, really reflective down here. All the way up, it's going to be fairly dull down here. The default's around 5, which is fine. The other thing we want to do is we can rotate the lighting around it. So if you click this position button right here, then you're going to have this little slider, and this is taking your HDRI dome light that's lighting this, and you can rotate it. So as you drag this, you're rotating the light coming from a different direction. And that will change how the highlights look on your object as well as the shadow and which direction. And so you can play with where you want this to be. And then you can always reset it back to where its normal place is, okay? And then if you click here again, you can close that, and then I can close this. So that's pretty much sets up the lighting, and then I've given you background on putting your materials on there. Later, when we are doing your specific piece, then we'll do some other variety of controls. But now this pretty much gives you an overview of exactly what we're going to be doing with your bottle, in which we're making the bottle, then we make the liquid that's going to be in it, how thick it's going to be. I don't know, it's according, some people are doing honey, which will be fairly thick. Some people are doing green tea, which is thinner. So, and then we're going to do 3 flavors of everything. So we'll end up duplicating the bottle and putting different flavors in here, so the colors in them will change and everything. But that gives you a pretty good overview of what we're going to be doing, and you need to finish your bottle and have it ready for next week. Okay, reach out to me if you have any more questions. All right, thank you very much.